The murder of James Jordan, father of legendary basketball player Michael Jordan, is a case that continues to generate debate and controversy even decades after the incident. James Raymond Jordan was born in Wallace, a small town in North Carolina, on July 31, 1936. It was in high school that James met and began dating Dolores Jordan, a young woman 5 years younger than him. In 1956, after graduating from high school and serving in the U.S. Air Force, James was transferred to a military base in Virginia, and the relationship turned into marriage. James and Dolores married and had 5 children, one at each stage of their lives, the most famous being Michael Jordan, who was born in 1963 while the family was living in Brooklyn, New York. As crime in Brooklyn was increasing in the 1960s, the family decided to move away from there. They then moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, so that Michael and the other children could grow up in a more controlled environment. It was there that the couple's last daughter was born. The Jordan family was raised in the Methodist faith, and they were a middle-class family. James was a big fan of sports, especially basketball and baseball, and he was the one responsible for encouraging young Michael to play sports. James always supported Michael Jordan's career, but at first he wanted his son to be a baseball player. A curious fact about the Jordan family is that his daughter Dolores has an autobiography, a book of memoirs, in which she makes heavy and shocking statements about her father, Mr. James. The book is called In My Family's Shadow, and in this book, Dolores Jordan claims that she was sexually abused by her father between the ages of 8 and 16, and that her mother chose to ignore the evidence. When young Dolores finally confessed, her mother, Mrs. Jordan, in her version, disregarded her story and said it was a lie, and silenced her daughter by threatening to put her in a home for girls. The most interesting thing about this story in this book of memoirs is that Dolores apparently seems to understand her mother's reasons and motives behind it. In an interview she said, "My parents worked hard to be good providers. If my mother had sued my father, she would have been a hard-working single mother with 5 children. If that had happened, Michael wouldn't be Michael. My parents wouldn't have been there to drive him to practices and games. And to pay for camps, my sister wouldn't have been able to go to college." On July 23, 1993, James was returning from a funeral in North Carolina. During the trip, he stopped at a rest area along U.S. Route 74 to take a nap in his luxury Lexus SC 400, a gift from Michael. It was at that moment that 2 young men, Daniel Green and Larry Demery, approached him with the intention of robbing him. They claimed to have initially been unaware that the victim was the father of one of the world's most famous figures. During the robbery, James was fatally shot in the chest. The assailants claimed the gun went off accidentally, but evidence indicated otherwise. After the murder, Green and Demery transported James's body to a swamp in South Carolina, where they abandoned it. They stole several of his belongings, including his car, which was dismantled, and an NBA championship ring that Michael had given to his father. James Jordan's body was found in a state of decomposition on August 3, 1993, but due to the advanced state of the body, it was not immediately identified. The revelation of who the body belonged to only came when a red Lexus registered to Michael Jordan was found completely smashed with no windows in a forest near Fitview, North Carolina, considerably far from where the body had been discovered. The forensic scientist who had stored the jawbone and handprints performed an identification test, and eventually the identity was revealed as belonging to James Jordan, Michael's father. The investigation and arrests. On July 23, 1993, 17-year-old Larry Demery and 18-year-old Daniel Green saw a car stopping and thought it was an opportunity for them to rob a man because the car was eye-catching and expensive. According to Larry Demery, the two had a plan to rob a motel that was close to where James stopped, but when they saw the flashy car, they changed their minds. According to him, Daniel was there near the car checking how they could rob it, and Mr. James was there in the passenger seat sleeping. Suddenly, he woke up scared. Daniel was also scared and pulled the trigger on Mr. James, fatally shooting him in the chest. In other words, in this version, James died inside the car from being shot. Larry also said that they had no idea who the victim was until they started searching the car to rob it, which was the main plan. Then they discovered that it was Michael Jordan's father, so the two came up with a quick plan to hide the body and dispose of the car. They somehow put the body inside the car and drove to the place where they had dumped the body, in the swamp, and then abandoned the broken-down car in the nearby forest. Daniel's version of the case is also very different. Larry, who is Daniel's childhood friend, was with him at some party, a barbecue, and that's when Larry supposedly disappeared to sell drugs. That is, he was a drug dealer. And then he would have returned to this busy barbecue, asking Daniel if he could help him get rid of a body. In this version, Daniel would only be involved as an assistant in hiding the body. He admits this, but denies that he killed Jordan. The police found Daniel Green and Larry Demery after they used James's cell phone to make personal calls. This provided a crucial clue for the investigators. In addition, James's car was tracked, revealing a series of mistakes made by the suspects during and after the crime. Both were arrested and charged with the murder. During the trial, Larry Demery accepted a plea bargain and testified against Green, claiming that he was the one who fired the fatal shot. Green, in turn, maintained his innocence, claiming that he was not directly involved in the murder. Both were sentenced to life in prison in 1996. Although Green always claimed that his participation in the crime was limited, he was unable to convince the courts. Over the years, he tried several appeals, but without success. Daniel and Larry were best friends. They met in school and grew up together. Daniel claimed that Larry was living in his house, and during the investigation, a gun was found in the house where they supposedly lived, and it was presented at the trial as the murder weapon, although ballistics did not confirm that the shot actually came from that gun. They did not have enough evidence to say whether the shot came from that gun. Another interesting fact is that, without this ballistics evidence, Daniel might not have been sentenced to life in prison. He would have been sentenced, but to a lesser sentence. Questionable sentence. The story that the state had to accuse Daniel and Larry was that they tried to rob James Jordan while he was sleeping in the car. James got scared when he saw Daniel there near his car at the door, and it was at that moment that Daniel didn't think twice and shot him in the chest. Then, they took him, drove the car to South Carolina, and dumped the body in that swamp, and then disposed of the car. But Larry's testimony only happened after he agreed to make a plea deal. Daniel's defense said that it was a lie that Daniel wasn't there when that shot was fired. For the defense, the version is that Daniel said that they were at a barbecue party. Larry disappeared or arrived there later, asking him to help get rid of a body. Daniel Green says that his mother, sister, several friends, and a girl named Bob Joe, who Green used to date, were also present at the barbecue. Several witnesses, including Bob Joe, corroborated Daniel's story. Another interesting point is that she was not called by the defense to testify. Another point of uncertainty in the sentence is that blood tests were inconclusive regarding the presence of blood in the passenger seat. Another extremely unusual thing is that they never performed a bullet trajectory or ballistic tests to determine the shooter's position, because if you look at Larry's detailed testimony, he narrates exactly how it happened, so he shows Daniel's position, and it would be easy to do a ballistics test there since the hole was found in Mr. James's body. Only some time after the trial was Daniel's defense able to explain and prove, by conducting a private expert report, that the bullet trajectory did not match the story told by Larry, that is, Daniel was not outside and James was not startled and shot. It did not make sense according to the trajectory of these tests performed by the defense. Another point is that the coroner concluded that Mr. James had suffered a single shot to the chest, a single shot. That is, if he was sleeping in the car, he was wearing his shirt. But in the reports, the expert says that he looked hard, but did not find any bullet hole in the shirt. But when the shirt was presented at the trial, there was a bullet hole. The prosecution claims that they presented evidence of gunpowder on the shirt, but the coroner says he did not observe any traces of gunpowder. Green's defense at the time was weak, but he sought other lawyers to appeal the case. The big question is that if he did not pull the trigger and only participated as an assistant in hiding the body, his sentence should have been much shorter. In the same way that Larry, given his version of events, only helped hide the body, he only saw Daniel shooting, he should not have been sentenced to life in prison. The state was interested in resolving the situation quickly, mainly because of the media and because it involves Michael Jordan's father. During the trial, more factual issues were also presented. For example, Green showed where Michael Jordan's NBA ring was buried, and another point that was also very compromising is that there is an amateur rap video clip in which Green appears wearing James's watch and also an NBA ring, things that they stole from the car. On December 31st, 2018, Daniel Green's current attorney, Christine, visited Larry Demery in prison, and she claims that he said he lied at trial because he was coerced by investigators to tell the story. In 2020, sources reported that Mr. Demery's parole was accepted and he was expected to be released in 2023, but reportedly, in 2021, that decision was revoked. Recently, the judge in the case, Gregory Weeks, requested Daniel Green's parole, citing a lack of concrete evidence to incriminate him. The possibility of Daniel Green's release has reopened the debate about the fairness of the criminal justice system and the importance of ensuring that innocent people are not convicted. Weeks said that a forensic analyst failed to disclose a crucial piece of information in the case, that the substance found in the car in which James Jordan was killed may not have been blood. According to him, the professional never revealed that other forensic tests performed inside the vehicle were negative or inconclusive for blood. The judge stated that the omission of the result has haunted him for almost 3 decades. He added that the evidence could have changed the entire trial. The impact on Michael Jordan. The murder of James Jordan had a devastating impact on Michael. Mr. James was very present in Michael's life. He speaks very fondly of his father. He says that he was a rock, a fortress for him. He was always there giving advice, which explains why Michael was so shaken when his father died in such a tragic way and abandoned basketball to take up the sport that his father loved. In 1993, Michael Jordan was at the height of his career, leading the Chicago Bulls in search of a 3rd championship in the league. Michael was one of the leaders of the dream team that enchanted the world at the 1992 Olympics. Everything was going very well for him and for the family. There was no indication that the Jordans' lives would turn upside down so quickly. Despite returning to basketball later, the trauma of losing his father was something Michael carried throughout his life.